Hello there, everybody. I want to welcome you here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. And I just noticed when the screen came up, just a little bit too far over for my liking. Okay, so we got my water here and my albums here. So tonight, I want to welcome you to Into the Progverse, or Into the Prog Universe, if you prefer, in which we are going to explore some elements of progressive rock. The elements we're going to explore tonight is I've decided to do yet another episode of six other prog bands that could have made the big six. These ones are a little different from the first six we did. So the first episode we did was the big six, which everybody knows is King Crimson, Jethro Tull, Yes, Genesis, Pink Floyd, and did I miss one? I did. Can't remember the other one now. Jethro Tull, Pink Floyd, Yes, Genesis, King Crimson, and ELP. Sorry, that was what I was forgetting. I always forget ELP. Sorry, ELP, nothing personal. And then the next episode we did was six contemporary. So six of their contemporary bands that came out in the same time period as them that also probably could have made the big six. And now we're going to do one where we're going to do six other bands that could have made the big six, but they weren't contemporary. So they didn't come out in that late 60s, early 70s period. So this is kind of like 74, 75 plus, I guess, is maybe best way to do it. And I've picked six bands that fall from that era on to modern times. So without further ado, I'm going to get to it. So whether these could be like the modern big six, maybe you might want to call them that, or maybe if these bands had done their music at the same time as the contemporaries, maybe one or two of them could have been big six. It's all up to you what you want to do. It's all just in good fun. So the first one is not going to be any surprise to people that I pick this band. They're my big one, Rush. So Rush, this particular album is probably their magnus opus. Many people feel this is their best album. I'm not going to argue with it. It's not one of my favorites, though. It doesn't even make the top five, but it's still a great album. They have many albums like this. So to me, I always think of Rush as a prog band. To me, that's what they are. It's kind of started with their second album, little bits of prog on that. More prog, a lot more prog on their third album. Then you've got a kind of prog metal sound on that fourth album, then really proggy on their fifth and sixth albums, and seventh and eighth, which is this one, it's number 8, had a lot of that prog element, but some other elements of music put in there as well, some reggae, some pop, some electronic sounding music, almost very synthetic at times, and some, of course, heaviness, which has always been maybe their biggest quality. Geddy Lee even said throughout their career, they've played all kinds of different styles, but there's always been that heaviness, and I can't really disagree with them on that. Now, some people might even call this a prog metal band. I wouldn't call them that. They do have an element of metal to their music, obviously. They also have a hard rock element to the music. They've got some reggae, some synthpop albums, and then, of course, your classic kind of progressive rock sound to them. But towards the end of their career, they kind of went back to that proggy element a bit, and the heavy element, they went back in their last 3 albums. But many people feel this is their best. And almost all these songs for me are burned out because they got so much radio play. The only one that I still really like is listening to all the time is Vital Signs. It was my favorite initially, still my favorite, hasn't changed. Fantastic. So anyways, Rush. is one of those prog bands that I think if they'd come out during that contemporary time, they might have squeezed a band or two out of there. The next one up is a band I don't really follow. So kind of like Emerson, Lake and Palmer, I don't really follow them. I do like this particular album, and I think that if I did follow them, I probably would like them more. But I just never really been following them as of yet, anyways. And that's Porcupine Tree. This is the Light Bulb Sun. For those of you who don't know who they are Steven Wilson's band, right? So this particular album is I think I have 3 of their albums in total. This is the one that I've listened to the most. Lots of pretty good stuff on here. I don't really know how to classify this band. Proggy, absolutely, but they have other elements to their music as well. And I just haven't been involved with them enough to really kind of go really in depth on them. I can't really discuss in depthly about something I don't know as much about. I do like this though; it's quite good. I actually bought another album and I had been listening to it and forgot I had it, and then bought it again, so I have it twice. 3 albums and 2 of them are the same one. Yeah, Porcupine Tree. And Steven Wilson, of course, has gone on to make himself a name and remastering a lot of classic rock albums, and with great abilities. And so for me, and I do like some of his own personal stuff quite a bit as well, but I don't think I like it as much as this particular album at this point in time is still my favorite. I'm sure there'll be others that'll come along. Anybody want to recommend one? I would gladly listen to that. Like I said, I'm kind of a novice to Porcupine Tree, but I recognize their significance in the prog world. And they could, if we were to make a new Big Six, they could be one of those bands. They could. Next up, this is a guy I never really thought was prog initially. But this album kind of opened my eyes to him. And I've since bought 2 more albums by them I like both of them too. And then today, when I was out, I managed to pick up 4 more. So now I have 7 of this guy's albums when I only really didn't even really want the one at first. And that's Alan Parsons. So I owe this to Ben. He pushed this band on me. Initially, I had this album. I didn't initially like it much. There was a couple of songs on here I did like. Eye in the Sky, of course, and Cirrus, the first 2. But after that, I wasn't really following it too much. But then I put it back in my playlist, and it did much better the second time around. And then it made me want to buy other stuff. And so the place I go, Encore Records, on King Street in Kitchener, if you happen to be there, they had a whole bunch of Alan Parsons stuff in the used bin that were almost like brand new. So I bought 1 or 2 over the last couple of months, and then today I went in and I saw they had them all at $6. So I bought the whole stack, like 4 or 5 of them. One of them I grabbed by accident, was actually a greatest hits, but no skin. It was only $6, no big deal. So Alan Parsons, I believe he's American. People will correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he's an American. I think he's also known for Dark Side of the Moon. I believe that's where I'm remembering him from. This is a really, really great album. They've got other ones that are almost as good, maybe even better. I mean, I won't know until I've listened to them all, but I think this guy had a stellar run of albums and probably easily could have been one of those Big Six. Still learning about him. He's still fairly new to me, but I think that if people were putting together a Big Six of post 1973, he would have to be one of them for absolute certain. So Alan Parsons Project. So that's 3 of them. The next one. So in the early 80s, by the late 70s, early 80s, prog music was kind of considered dinosaur music, and a lot of the traditional rock prog bands had changed their style completely. All the big ones, Rush, Yes, Genesis, even Pink Floyd had become a little bit poppy as well. I know that offends some people, but I think they didn't necessarily completely turn over, but they did become a little bit on the poppy side. Emerson, Lake and Palmer, I don't even think existed at that point. They did have a Love the Love Beach, and I'm not sure I could call that a prog album, or not much of one, anyways. And King Crimson still producing albums though. They were the one lone spire there, I guess. But then a second movement of progressive rock started in the early mid kind of 1980s, and a whole host of what they would call neo-prog bands, or the second wave of progressive rock, came out. Many of them carrying on that Genesis sound, some carrying on a Yes sound, but most of them carrying on the Genesis sound. And no band was more prominent from that movement than this one, Marillion. I think the quality of those first four albums, for certain, for me anyways, make them an absolute shoe-in to be maybe a Big Six album. If you were doing a second new list, I think they'd have to be on that. They might even have enough here to make the original Big Six. But I love all these Fish era albums a lot. The other Marillion, the post-Fish era with Hogarth. Hogarth is a fantastic singer. That music is very different, though. I don't find there's a couple of albums that have some progginess to them, but for the most part, it doesn't interest me, and I don't think of them as a prog band at that point. Although they've probably put out more than twice as many albums under him as they have with Fish. But still, Marillion, I think, is a band who definitely would qualify to be one of the Big Six. This particular album is maybe their strongest. I think many people feel it's their magnus opus. Pseudo Silk Kimono, fantastic. Then you've got Kaylee and Lavender, which are the kind of the hits of the album. More well known. Kaylee, especially a big hit for them. Heart of Lothner, I like this. Lothan, sorry. Waterholes, good. Lord of the Backstage, and Blind Cursed, and then Childhood's End and White Feather at the end. This is a strong progressive rock album. Some people say this isn't even really progressive. I beg to differ with that. Those first four albums have a huge progressive element to them. And to be honest with you, I kind of don't have a lot of discrepancy between any of the four. I just think they're all fantastic, and that's what makes this band deserve to be on this list. Okay, the next two bands, maybe a little controversy, more for me than them, right? So some people think of this as a progressive rock band, and I think many people think I'm stupid because I don't think of them as a progressive rock band. But then again, I don't really follow them, so I'm only going on what I've casually listened to. And I own a couple of their albums, I will admit that. They do have some boogie elements to their music, which isn't really proggy at all. But they have a fair bit of prog elements to them. Many people think of this band as being very similar to Styx, but more proggy than Styx. And of course, we're talking about Kansas. I picked this album, Left Overture, because I think it's probably their best album. You know, maybe there's one or two that are rivaling it, but I think this is probably their best, and this is them probably at their peak now. A lot of people are saying that their newer albums, the last two or three, are very good albums. I haven't heard any of them. I haven't listened to any of them. It's not that I think this band isn't progressive. I just think of them as more of a hard rock band. But if you were doing a modern version of progressive rock, of the Big Six, these guys would have to be considered for that. They had a run of very successful albums and maybe a bit of a down period, and now they're having a new run of very good albums. Whether they're progressive or not, I don't know. I haven't listened to them. They're not really a band I followed a great deal. I've tried, and I will continue to try to get into them. They seem like a natural fit for me, but then there's a couple elements of their music that I don't really like, and I think that's probably the blockage right there. But anyways, strong. This is a strong album. Of their albums, this is the one that if I go to one, it's usually the one that I try to use to break through. Maybe I should try one of the other ones. That might be a difference for me. Anyways, Kansas, I think, has to be considered as a possibility for the Big Six. So I think they came out maybe a little bit past that initial part in progressive rock, and also being American didn't really get them a shoe in for that, because most of all the other ones were British. I'm not quite sure their starting period of when they had their first album or when they actually became a band and a notoriety. It might have been in that less than 73 period, but the big movement for them came mid 1970s. So Kansas, I think it's got to be considered for one of those spots. Okay, the last band, many people probably wouldn't know, but I think these guys, they've put out they worked on these albums for 30 years, all three of them. They put them all out within a short period of time of each other. And my hope is that I don't have to wait another 30 years for them to put out more albums. I'm hoping that because of the quality and the greatness of these albums, I'm hoping that they decide to put out some more albums by them, because I absolutely love this. And I wanted to give the European element a chance to shine in the progressive rock era field as well. So this is the Chronicles of Father Robin and the Songs and Tales of Iowa. This is the first album, book one, which is State of Nature. This is a good album. I think their third album is better, and I'm only now going to start listening to the second album. That one I missed it somehow. I'm not sure, but eventually I got it. So now I have all three. They're all great. All three of these albums have been my favorites at one point or a time or another. I think this band, if it continues to make albums, easily could be considered for a Big Six membership. Now, maybe you think 3 albums doesn't qualify you for a Big Six membership. And technically speaking, I probably agree with you, but I think this band is so good. If they were to continue along the same vein and do something else similar to it, they would just definitely have to be involved. So anyways, those are my considerations for the Big Six, the modern Big Six, if you want, or maybe possibilities of replacing one of the other Big Six albums or Big Six bands. These are all bands that I think could be considered for that. For a large degree, at least with Kansas and Rush, and of course, to a larger extent, Alan Parsons Project, these bands have the commercial success to actually be considered. If you were going by commercial success, they actually have enough commercial success that they could compete with those Big Six and probably even push one or two of them out. Marillion is more of a leader of a group of albums, and so I think they kind of represent that neo-prog era and are often considered the greatest of the neo-prog bands. And they did reasonably well commercially as well. The other two bands, I don't know what the status on the on Porcupine Tree's success. Did they sell millions? I don't know. I don't think they did. I think they're just really solid progressive rock band and have one of the great innovators in the prog scene. So I think they have to consider this is just a work of masterpiece. All 3 albums, I'm almost certain, will end up being masterpiece albums with me at some point or another. So if your first 3 albums are all masterpieces, you really have no place to go but down, right? So for me, all of them have their reasons why they could be progressive rock Big Sixers, and I have no problem with it. Now, there's some others that I'm sure other people would like to throw in there. And of course, you're more than welcome to do so. That is the way these things work best. I decided to do this third episode, so I just didn't lock it into one particular era. There are many eras of prog music. There's the second wave of prog music, and then maybe would even consider the third wave in the 90s. Then you've got a lot of modern prog, and a lot of the modern prog is European in nature, especially the Scandinavian countries of Norway and Sweden and Finland, all producing lots of that kind of sound. Finland may be producing a little bit more of the metal sound than as much prog as the other two, but definitely these are all them. I also like some of the stuff from Poland, some of the Italian stuff and the French stuff. These are all some pretty solid bands here too. And of course, even Canada has a lot of that kind of newer stuff too, Yeah, so just some really, really good, solid progressive rock that's coming out now. I think this may be the best era of progressive rock because you got the old bands still making it and a lot of new ones still making it. Hey, Jeremy, welcome to the show. Glad to have you. Yeah, so there's, I love prog music. That's probably why I chose this. I did originally have an idea of a prog monster as my background that I had an artist that I was going to get to do this, and it was a Conan monster from a Savage Sword that I had put up, but the person fell through, and I haven't found anybody who I want to do that with. So perhaps that will be something I do this year. But yeah, prog music, fantastic. I sold myself short before I started this channel. I used to think there was some really good prog bands and then maybe half a dozen not so good prog bands. And I thought maybe in total there might be 12 or 14 prog bands. Naivety is a great thing, isn't it? Yeah, Big Al Red Sox fan. Love that guy. He is absolutely, for the live baseball, and even I'm not a football fan, but the way he presents it, I really like. I like his style. He could have been a color commentator for baseball or football or whatever he decided to do. He just really has that flair about him. My only issue with him is that he's often on very late, and I'm usually asleep by the time he comes on, so I don't get to watch him live, which is what I prefer to do. Sometimes I like to go back and go through one of his playlists and play them all over time. I haven't had much time for that since this channel's kind of been taking up a lot of it. Yeah, he's great, fantastic. My favorite baseball guy, though, is probably Dave from the baseball demos. The guy is an absolute master of Stratomatic card baseball and a lot of different types of baseball. I think the guy is just great. I prefer to watch him than watch baseball. So I try never to miss an episode of his. And if I do, I go back and watch it, even if I don't get to go to the live thing. Sometimes, unfortunately, he said it himself that he puts out his videos when he can squeeze them in between other shows that are going on. Unfortunately, sometimes his comes out at 9:00 a lot of nights, and that's right around when I'm doing videos for my own channel. But when I have time, I definitely go and watch him. Baseball is probably my second favorite stuff to watch on YouTube, although I do like some of these nature stuff and other kind of stuff like that too. Yep. So yeah. So these are some really, really good bands, and many of them. I mean, other than Rush, who of course is my favorite band, and I've been listening to for well over 45 years now. The rest of these bands, and Marillion probably to a lesser extent, probably 40 years. I haven't been listening to them continuously, but I have followed them for that length of time. Other than that, the other bands, are fairly new to me, most of them coming about on this channel. Definitely this one is one of my favorites, though. Porcupine Tree, I haven't really taken off on them yet, but I do like some of the stuff I hear. And of course, Alan Parsons' project really has come full force for me in the last few months. Now, the only one here, of course, is Kansas. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, I can't get into them. I've tried and tried. I have at least 2 of their albums anyways, A Point of No Return and this one, Left Overture. I have listened to almost their entire discography at this point. Ben keeps giving me one every once in a while just to try to probe me into listening to them. But they're not a band I go to. I've tried putting their albums in my playlist that they don't last very long, though. They stand out like a sore thumb. Most of the time, the albums in my playlist, I'm enjoying listening to every one. So if I get one in there that I'm not really enjoying, I'm saying to myself, why is it even in here? So it doesn't get to stay very long if it's like that. So so Jeremy, do you have any progressive rock bands that you think could easily be in this the big 6 of prog rock? There are some of the other bands that other people have brought up that I haven't really followed. I did buy one today though, and this will be the second one by this band, the Moody Blues. I've never been a Moody Blues fan. There's nothing's ever prompted me to follow them, but I did see one today, and I thought, I'm going to give them a try. I do have another one by them that I've tried, and I didn't mind it. It was okay, but I didn't go back to it. So who knows? Sometimes these things take a while with me. I think I'm going to do a video next week of my 25 bands that I haven't, I've never followed and never really had much of an interest in. I'm curious to see who I'm going to put in this. I don't even know myself. I know there's some bands I don't like, but they won't be they're not the type of bands I'm going to put into something like this. I'll probably only put bands that I just haven't really been into. There's lots of them, more than I care to state. Yep, if you're a Genesis and a Yes fan, you will probably like some of this stuff here. Either of these 2 bands might intrigue you. Marillion, lots of that kind of Genesis sound to it. Another band that has that, IQ, Pendragon, those 2 bands also have a very Genesis sound to them. IQ's kind of outgrown it a bit. They probably have their own sound now, but initially some of their stuff, especially that, let's see if I can reach it from here. See if I can get it out so I can show you in case you're not aware of these guys. So this album, Dark Matter, this is like a modern Genesis album. So it's very Genesis sounding, lots of like Supper's Ready sound on a couple tracks here, really strong, but more modern and more clear and more concise sound to the music. They don't really sound like that anymore. They've moved away from that, but they're still very strong. I would think they might be. I don't go on Apple Music. I get most of my stuff from either YouTube or Bandcamp when I'm listening to it. Those are the 2 I like to go to listen to stuff when I'm trying to decide if I want it. They're on the Giant Electric P label if you like CDs. If you don't like CDs, you can probably go to, they have their own website, just IQ, just punch in IQ band, and it'll come up and show you all their albums. I believe I have 6 of their albums now. And the new one, of course, is fantastic. Another band you might like is this band, which I named in the show tonight, which is called the Chronicles of Father Robin. They're a bunch of Finnish bands that got together. Sorry, just sticking this back here so I don't lose it. That got together about 30 years ago, and they've been working on these albums for 30 years. They've released 3 of them all within 6 months of each other. They're really kind of J.R.R. Tolkien type story, but the music is fantastic. Very Yes-like. A lot of Yesy sound to this. They only use instruments from pre 1975. Like all the instruments on the album were instruments that were made pre 1975. So very kind of, you know, yeah, that very Yes sound to them, more so than any other band that I've listened to, other than Wobbler, who has a strong Yes sound to their music as well. But these guys are just fantastic. They came from 4 sources. So the music comes from 4 different bands, kind of like Transatlantic with the Porcupine Tree, Marillion, and what's the other band? Spock's Beard Connection. These have connections to 4 Finnish bands, including, just looking to see if they give a list of where these guys came from. Other than Wobbler, which I knew right off the bat, there's Torsh. I can never pronounce the name of this band, but I have the album right here. Tuskmore, that's it. Tuskmore. These guys are really good, and one of their players is on this album with this group. Fantastic. Then you've got there's a couple of other bands that play on this album as well that I'm not as familiar with, but just absolute killer album. If you like that Yes sound, you will like this. Or if you prefer, Warbler is good too. They've got a lot of that very Yesy sound to it. I don't want to lose this Tuskmore, sorry. Yeah, this is really really good. And there's quite a few there's quite a few bands out there that do a very Yes music sound. There's a couple of them that were like cover bands for Yes, actually, and then went on to do their own Yes-like music. Yes, I do like Steve Hackett's music. I haven't had a chance to listen to that particular Genesis Revisited. I did see it, but it was in the new packaging and it was like $30-some. I didn't want to spend that on it. So I actually got his Steve Hackett album today, the new one, his live one, which I've listened to and did I think I did a video on it for my What's New collection. Really good. So good. So classic Steve Hackett sounding. Yes, I definitely will go and listen to this Genesis Revisited. I've heard good things about it, and if I can get one that's not too expensive, I would probably get it. But when I buy something like that, I got to give up on 3 other albums. Yeah, definitely a fantastic. One of the great guitar players. And the best thing about Steve Hackett is there's always new music from him. This very rarely does a year go by without him putting out at least an album. He's kind of reminds me in some ways of Hawkwind. They're both the same. They both yearly are putting out either a studio album or a live album or both in some cases. Hawkwind is a band that I absolutely love, but more of a Pink Floydish sound than the Yes or Genesis part to their music. Yeah, some really good, those neo-prog bands, Pendragon, of course, IQ, even some Solace. All these bands have Genesis elements to the music. Seems that when these neo-prog bands came into existence, a lot of them were driven by the Genesis sound. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing him too. I think he's worth the price of admission. But the way it is now, the cost to go to one concert, I could buy 40 or 50 albums that I like and have that forever to listen to as long as I want. So you go to a live concert like that, You hope that you get a good seat. You hope he's on his game that night. You hope the sound system's great, and you hope that the tons of money you laid into it is worth it. It's not like it was back in the 70s and 80s. Now these people that buy up all of the tickets and then jack the price up 500%. It's just too bad that has to happen. I'm fortunate in some ways. I've seen pretty much everybody I've wanted to see, although I haven't gone to any concerts since the 80s. I stopped going because I found that I felt like I was damaging my hearing. I still have a little bit of that to it, so I don't want to ruin that. It's important to be able to hear your music. Makes it a better experience. I never did see Genesis, to be honest. They were pre my going to rock concert era. So by the time Gabriel left the band and then Steve Hackett in the 70s, I still was too young to be going to rock concerts at that time. So I never seen them. And I didn't want to see them once they became the pop band they were. So yeah, no, I never saw them. I did see trying to think of who it was I saw. I keep thinking I saw Peter Gabriel, but I'm pretty sure I didn't go to that when he was here. I don't think I did. There was a reason why I didn't go. I can't remember what it was, though. Also, in that period of time, when I started going to concerts, I was very much into metal and hard rock. I wasn't really following prog music to much of an extent. Yeah, I was probably too young to see them. That's exactly what it was for me. I did see Yes a couple times. Once on the 90125 tour, and then again on the Big Generator tour. I'm pretty sure I saw them both times. I've seen, they were there, and I've seen Rush maybe 3 or 4 times, but I've never seen Genesis. Would have loved to see them when they were doing that Gabriel era stuff. Would have been fantastic. You like the Archives Volume 1, eh? That's good. I have pretty much every Genesis album. The only one I don't have is the last one that they produced. Can't even think of the name of it. I can see it, but I can't picture what it was. But I have every other one. And I have most of the live stuff that I like by them as well. Yeah, that's it. Calling all stations. I just never got. I've not. I think part of the reason I never got it is because I just never have seen it around. It's never in the bin. It's never in the used bin for sure. But I've never even seen it in the bin where they keep all the new stuff that they bring in. I've never seen it. And I'm not one for buying stuff off of eBay or anything. I just won't do it. The Archives one I've never seen. I mean, I'm gathering there's a couple, but I haven't seen any of them. I do have every Peter Gabriel album as well, including some of the stuff that people might not think of studio albums, like The Passion of Christ. There's a couple of other. I think there's one other one. I have all of his stuff. I've got maybe half a dozen Steve Hackett albums now, and including the new one I got, which is a live one. It's quite good. I'll be doing a video on it at the end of the month when I do my new albums purchased. I do that once a month at the end. I bought a bunch of stuff today, about 12 discs to go with a couple I bought last week. Last week, beginning of this week, I guess. Yeah, I kind of like my studio albums more than the live ones, but I have to say over the last year or so, I've bought quite a few live albums that I quite like a lot. And the Seconds Out by Genesis is like top notch. It's got to be in the top 5 of all time for me, live albums, that is. One of them anyways. It's getting there. Waiting its turn in my playlist too. I never used to put live albums in my playlist, but now I've had as many as 4 or 5 of them waiting their turn. Some really good stuff. Eloy has a fantastic one as well. I've never heard the live version of Lamb Lies Down, other than if you're talking on Seconds Out, yes, I have heard it. Yeah, sorry about that. I was thinking of something else. I do like the original live album by Genesis too, when it's only got the 5 tracks on it. All 5 tracks are amazing, just amazing. I don't think I would. I've got a couple of other Genesis live albums. One's called The Shorts, the other one's called The Longs. It's okay, but you can tell it's very kind of commercial sounding. They've popped it up quite a bit, and they play a lot of that poppy Genesis that I don't really listen to on it. But it's not a bad album. Neither of them are bad. I mean, Phil Collins has a great voice. I don't think he's as good as Peter Gabriel, but he's still very good. 3 Sides Live. I don't know. Is that Genesis as well? I've heard this. That's a Genesis album, I believe, right? I've got several Yes albums that are live as well. My favorite being the original Yes songs. Sorry, I can't remember what it was called. I do have Yesterdays, I believe it is. That was not bad either. Or Yes Shows is the other one I'm thinking of. But they've got a ton of live stuff too. Even Rush now has like 5 live albums. It's crazy. Live albums seem to be the way to go. Everybody because people can't really afford to go to the live concerts like they used to, unless you want a mortgage, unless you've got extra expenditures in cash. Most people just buy the live stuff and watch that instead. That's what I tend to do, because I don't really like big crowds. I'm not really into all of the dubious stuff that goes on at those concerts. People getting in the way, can't hear properly. It hurts my ear when I go. So yeah, I just don't bother anymore. And then of course the price is huge, right? Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Duke. It's a funny album for me. It kind of reminds me a bit of And Then There Were Three, and the same response I had when And Then There Were Three. When I first got it, it took me about 4 years before I really liked it. Now I like it a lot, but I didn't initially. I think the same problem might be with Duke. It might even be worse with Duke. I listened to it, and other than the 2 pop songs, Misunderstanding and Turn It On Again, I've never really penetrated the rest of the stuff yet. I do like the Abacab album and the Genesis album, the 2 that came after that. Abacab is a good album. It may be my favorite of the post-progressive era. Yeah, a lot of people like that album. It's well liked in the Genesis catalog. Many people consider it the kind of final Prog album by them. But for some reason, I don't really care for it. It just doesn't sit with me very well. I've tried several times to put it in my playlist. It just doesn't stay in there very long. There's too many other albums waiting their turn for me to be giving an album like that a chance that I don't really care for. So now basically what I do is every once in a while I play these albums, throw them in there just to give them a listen to, see if maybe my feelings about them change. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, I can't even remember what album follows. Is that the Dances album? What is that called? I can't think of what it's called now. It's too far away to reach. I can't look. It's over on the other side of the room. Oh yeah, Genesis. You mean the self-titled album that came out? Did that come out after Abacab? I thought that came out before Abacab. So it came out before? Oh, so it was after. I never can remember which one of those two came first. So Abacab was first, and then that one came out second. So that one is the one that has Mama on it, I believe, right? Or is Mama on Abacab as well? Okay, yeah, okay, that's what I thought. I thought the self-titled album had Mama on it, so it does have a couple of tracks on there that I like. I'm not. My memory of the tracks isn't that good on that particular album because I just haven't followed it that much. But I do like that one, and the Abacab I like even more. Yeah, Second Home by the Sea is not too bad. I do like that. That's on the Genesis album as well, right? The self-titled one, that is. Yeah. Okay. So that, yeah, I think I like that album. A lot of older Genesis, progressive Genesis fans don't really like that album. They cite it as being one of the worst. I think the worst ones are the much later ones, the ones that came out in the late 80s and 90s when they just sounded kind of in some ways like a Phil Collins solo albums. And I think that was designed because I think Banks really liked the sound of his solo albums and thought they could make a lot of money off of it. And he turned out to be right. So I can't really fault him for that. Yeah, most people think that way. But you can't, like Peter Gabriel did say it when they asked him um, what he thought about that his Genesis era compared to that one. He says, well, they sold a lot more albums with those albums than he did with the progressive albums of the early 70s. So if the poppy sound is what you like, or if you like that Genesis sound that came out in the 90s, then they're great albums. It's not for me. I'm not a hater of that era, though. A lot of people really detest that era of Genesis. There's a big kind of split in Genesis fans. There's that pop era people who don't even know about the Peter Gabriel stuff, and then the Peter Gabriel people who can't stand the pop era. So, but there are some people like myself who kind of cross the barrier. I don't mind some of their stuff on those albums, and I'm not a hater of any of their albums really. There is one album I think is kind of really weak and don't care for it. I think it was the last one before Calling All Stations. Can't think of the name of it now, but yeah, I don't really like that album too much, but most of the rest of them I'm okay with. There isn't really any Genesis albums that I hate. I wouldn't venture to say I hate any of them. Even their first album, which was quite poppy actually. It was prior to that Genesis progressive sound. It's pretty good, but it's very poppy. Yeah, you're just a person that probably, because you're younger, that's the era that you kind of got into. So I find this the same with Rush fans. There's the Rush fans that only like the progressive stuff from the 70s. There are Rush fans that only will listen to the 80s and 90s Rush. And then there's maybe a little bit of a crossover between the two in the last era of the band, that kind of hard rock era, I call it, I guess, with some progressive elements to their music. A little bit different. But I'm not a huge Rush fan of that pop era either, the techno era I call it, or the synth pop era, or the Police era for some people. And Yes did the same thing too. They had their really classic era of progressive rock, and then they did their very poppy era, and then they tried to come back, and they've had a whole bunch of different sounds on their music since the late 80s. So probably from like 90 through to now, they've had varying degrees of success. Some of their stuff I like quite a bit, other stuff not so much. Yeah, so that's why you like so Invisible Touch, that's like the album that came after the Genesis album, right? So that's like it's Duke, then Abacab, then Genesis, and then Invisible Touch. Those are the four in a row, right? I like all four of those albums to a lesser, greater or lesser degree. I don't love any of them, but I like them all. Yeah, that's what I figured. Yeah, the one that came after that in the '90s, I didn't like that album at all. And I don't know, there might have been two albums at that time. We Can't Dance is the one album I'm thinking of, but I think there's another one too, but I can't think of what it's called. Maybe it's just the one album. They have very, very Phil Collins sounding albums. Some of the later ones sound like solo albums. I do like the first three Phil Collins albums quite a bit. And then the next couple I didn't mind. But that last one I didn't care for either. There won't be and the only thing that's unfortunate is I think, and I see this with some bands, but and there's a few bands like this that are still around where all the original members are still like, or all of the classic members are all still alive. Yes, or Genesis is one of those bands. Black Sabbath is one of those bands. Kiss is one of those bands. All the classic members are still alive, but they don't seem to like each other enough to do anything. Although in the case of Sabbath, that's not entirely true. They do like each other. I just think that they had huge drug problems. Those guys. It's amazing. It's amazing they're all still alive. Let's put it that way. You grew up in the owner of the Lonely Heart, so you're kind of the same as the Genesis era, the pop era was where the synth pop era, whatever you want to call it. And Rush was at that point doing the same thing as Yes and Genesis, trying to put out commercial sounding stuff that was popular with people. So I fully get why people like that era. It's I grew up in the '70s with the progressive stuff. That's why I like it so much better. Again, of the three bands, I would say Yes and Genesis are pretty close. I like both their pop eras more than I like Rush's pop era. I don't like at all. There is maybe a couple tracks on Red Sector 1 and on Grace Under Pressure that I don't mind, and Roll of Bones is okay, but those Presto and Power Windows, oh, I loathe those albums. I don't like them at all. Oh yeah, you're a spring chicken at 50. There you go. But it's good. You can still go back and appreciate all this music. And like I said, there's a lot of stuff out there by newer bands that don't short yourself out. Go and check some of these bands out. There's quite a few. Yes is a band that there are a multitude of bands that follow and play. This band here, I'm going to pull them out. I've got all 5 of their studio albums, but I'll just pull out these 2. This one is fantastic. Very, very Yes sounding. This could be almost a Yes album. The guy's vocals are very similar too. This one maybe not so Yes sounding. The album cover is fantastic. The music is really good on here, but it's not as nearly as Yes sounding. This is their debut. Wobbler is the band. Fantastic band. Of all of the bands I've discovered on this channel, they're one of my 2 or 3 favorites. And very Yes sounding. Highly recommend them. Yeah, you can find a lot of these. If you look through the Scandinavian music scene for prog, you're going to find a lot of stuff there you'll like. Very, very early 70-ish sounding prog metal, prog, sorry, not metal, prog. And a lot of those bands have a yes element to their music. For some reason, the Norwegians tend to like that yes sound, where a lot of the British bands that came out later tend to like the Genesis sound. I'm not sure why that is, but it seems to be. And then you've got a few bands that have kind of taken on the Floyd sound as well, right? So nobody takes on the Jethro Tull sound, which is kind of funny because I think they're better than all the other bands. UK is a decent band. Ironically, the first album, which I think is a lot more progressive sounding, and just some absolute killer guitar on that album, and fantastic instrumentation is fantastic on that album. But for some reason, I kind of like the second one better, even though it's toned down a lot and has a lot more of a poppy element. Well, I wouldn't say it's poppy at all, but it is a lot more. Well, I guess it's probably more simplified and more commercial sounding than the first one, but I like it better for some reason. I'm not sure why. Because the first one I was okay with, I didn't mind it, but the second one, Danger Money, I think is the second album. That one is really good, and yet it's not nearly as proggy as the first one. And maybe that it's the normal case with me is that the prog stuff takes a lot longer for me to like, and in the end, I usually end up liking it more. Yeah, it's the same thing. I don't think I would. I've never owned either of the UK albums. It's kind of like Asia. There's some stuff by Asia I don't mind, but I just don't. They're not a band I would listen to. They're a little too commercially sounded, too bubblegumish. I guess maybe might be the words. I did like the first. I have to admit, I did like the first Asia album when it came out, but I haven't listened to it in. I own it, but I just never listened to it. It just never has any comeback for me. It's kind of lost its appeal, I guess is the word. There's albums like that out there. White Snakes '87. I loved it when it came out. Now I can't listen to it very much. Heat of the Moment, yeah. The album is called just Asia. I think it's just self-titled Asia. And then they started with the letters, Asia Alpha and Asia whatever. They all had A's after them, right? There is a couple that people say are very progressive, and I've gone and listened to the albums they suggested, and it doesn't do anything for me. And I'm a big Steve Howe fan. I love Steve Howe. He's my favorite guitar player, but I preferred him much more with Yes and on his own than I do in Asia. No, he wasn't. No, it was Jeff Downs that played on Asia originally. I don't think Rick Wakeman played with them at all, period. He did play on the Anderson, Bruford, Wakeman, and Howe album, which is kind of a Yes album. And he's got like 100 of his own solo albums, at least 100 anyways, close to that. Probably got more solo albums than anybody out there, except for maybe, what's the name of that band? Let's see if I can see them from here. I don't see them. I always forget the name of their name. But yeah, Wakeman has a good close to 100 studio albums. I would say the vast majority of them aren't very good though. No, I'm not I don't Bad Company's a band I never followed. I couldn't tell you a single song by them. Just I know initially that's what they wanted Rush to sound like. That's the record label was wanting them to be another Bad Company. Thank God that didn't happen. I don't think there's anything wrong with Bad Company. I have just never followed them. So when I do that video on Wednesday, I'll be making a list of 25 bands that I've never had any interest in. Not necessarily that I dislike them. I don't think I disliked any of them. I just don't have any interest in them. However, it's time for me to wind this thing down because I got baseball to do before I go to bed, and I don't want to be missing out on that. I'm just going to go over these albums one more time. Yeah, I've heard that. I couldn't tell you anything about it, the band at all. I'm sure I know some of their songs, but I would have to hear them to tell you what they were. So the 6 bands that we did that could have been in the Big Six: Rush, Porcupine Tree, Alan Parsons Project. Which side is up? Not sure what side is up. Yeah, this side up. Yeah, great. This guy's great. I'm so glad Ben turned me on to him. I knew who he was. I'd heard of him, and I've actually heard some of the stuff that I've bought too, but I didn't know it was him. Kansas, of course. Marillion. This is Misplaced Childhood, but that was for, you could pick any one of those first 4 and you wouldn't go wrong. And then, of course, the Chronicles of Father Robin. 3 solid, fantastic albums, all released in a 6-month period, chronicalizing the songs and tales of Iowa. So you got, this is the land one, and then there's a water one, and then there's an air one. Basically, if you want to break it down that way. And thanks, Jeremy, for coming aboard. Hopefully, we'll see you again. So next week, I'm going to do something. I'm going to get off of this the Big Six band thing, and we're going to go on to something different. I may do another collection, my collection of another band. I haven't decided, or I may go back to the topic I was going to do before Ben talked me into this topic. Anyways, hope to see you again. So take care and have yourself a good evening, and thanks for coming tonight, and thanks for joining me here. Take care and goodbye.